This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Now, on the podcast, we generally cover short business episodes, short private equity episodes. We'll often profile leaders. And then we also talk about interviews. We have interviews with great leaders in private equity and business. One of the things we do periodically is we do an episode that's at the end of the day on a ridiculous side subject. And this is one of those episodes. You could download, you don't have to download it, but bear with me. So today's discussion is karma and golf. And this will talk through a golf experience I had over the last several months with a close colleague of mine, and just how karma is. There's a phrase for it, karma. There's always a phrase for it. I don't like to use the phrase, but karma is a bitch. And here is the episode on karma, golf, and karma is a bitch. So the first thing that happens is I'm golfing with my close friend, who I've won a lot of money from this past year. He'll remain nameless. And on one of our last rounds of what was a chance to golf in the winter, he was standing behind me on my tee shot. And this is a horrible story. The tee ended up in his eye, and it turned out he had ultimately ended up with a detached retina, and he was standing behind me. But I don't know where the fault lies, but in any event, a very unfortunate circumstance. Now, for people that have not had detached retina surgery, this is about as little fun as you could have, because when you have a detached retina, for the next week, largely, so the gas bubble settles in place, everything settles in place, you have to have it, settle right. So you have to keep your face down as much as possible for the next week. And so this was sort of extremely unfortunate. I felt horrible. I sent him, $500 of tequila. I just didn't know what to do. I felt so bad about it. And I love the person. In some ways, I love the person far more than I would have expected to love the person. And so this is sort of the beginning of the karma story. So he ends up with his detached retina. He now is fine. I at some point tell him I want to get back on the golf course with him as soon as possible so I could win money before his golf skills have returned fully, because he's going to be rusty after really having been off the course for 6 weeks or so, still moving towards perfect vision again in the eye that got hit. And so really a sad, difficult detached retina story. So this is where the karma comes in. About a week or two ago, my eye starts to get blurry. And Gary, my friend, who will remain nameless, had to have his head down for a week. And he's about as hyperactive a person as they come. Big personality, pleasure to be with, often talks a lot, but a great, great guy. So I end up about a week or two ago with my eye blurry. I have to go to the eye doctor last week and assume that it's nothing. Because a couple of years ago, I had floaters in my eye, and the doctor said, not a big deal. You'll be okay. It'll go away, or you'll get used to it, and not a big deal. It turns out in the karma is a bitch category, and excuse my language. I apologize in case my mother is listening or anybody else is listening that doesn't approve. I go to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor on Tuesday says to me, you have a detached retina. And I'm like, how could that possibly be? So I end up just a month or so after my friend Gary really gets into full recovery with essentially the same surgery that he had, where I've got to had the surgery on Thursday. It's now Monday. I've got to keep my head down largely for another few days, doing the best I can. By nature, I've had to basically swear off coffee this week, not drink a lot of coffee, try and keep my head down as much as possible. This is about as difficult as it could be. Probably one of my favorite texts from the week was a text from this colleague, essentially saying, I'm out having drinks and dinner with my family. I know you're face down. How do you like those apples? So when we look at life, I guess and I didn't celebrate. I felt horrible about his surgery and what he had to go through, just horrible. But I guess this concept of Schadenfreude, to never be happy for somebody else's, unfortune or disfortune is a real thing. I think at the end of the day, we ought to look positively on everybody we think of and hope that karma doesn't come back to bite us, because this is one of the worst examples for me of karma being a bitch. And I understand this could be a ton worse. I had a friend that recently passed away from pancreatic cancer. so many other things out there that are so much worse than the detached retina. But in terms of the karma category and golf category, this is it for right now. Now, my friend Gary wants to get back in the course with me as soon as possible. Well, I'm rusty. My handicap had gone way down when his was going up. And now I see myself in a lot of trouble, but maybe we'll lower the stakes. In any event, thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. This is our podcast where we treat this as not a serious subject. So don't take it as you're going to get business lessons out of this. You're getting private equity lessons out of this. We just hope you enjoy listening to this and you find some humor in it. And at the end of the day, I'll be fine. Like Hamilton says, I'll be back and I'll be taking his money in not very long. But karma certainly is a bitch. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast.